everyone, welcome back to Adara's Altar. I have expressed in at least one previous video that my heart in beginning this channel as a ministry channel was to create a safe space for the women whose deepest and number one desire was to be a wife and mom. And so in this video, my purpose is to share some pearls that my mother's mom, my maternal grandma, whose prophetic marriage testimony I shared in a previous video, shared with me, pearls of wisdom, before she moved recently. I will link her marriage testimony in the description of this video if you want to go watch that. But I'm just going to get into 4 tips based on what my grandma shared with me growing up. And number 1, wait for marriage. I have shared that I am a virgin saving myself for marriage. I have a purity ring. And my maternal grandma's Puerto Rican mother was a virgin until she was married. She raised my grandma to also be a virgin until she was married. For context, I am half black from my dad and half Puerto Rican from my mom. I shared my maternal grandma's prophetic marriage testimony in that earlier video, and God blessed my grandma for her obedience with a lifelong marriage to my grandpa, whom I called Papa, who went to be with the Lord in 2013. And this was them when they were young. As I shared in a previous video, the Institute for Family Studies found that the lowest divorce rate belonged to the women who married as virgins, and my maternal grandma, who married as a virgin, was so happy with God's choice for her husband that even after she became a widow and had other men in her age group interested in her, she always told me she wouldn't remarry because, in her words, there was only one Papa. On my grandma's choice for a husband, she told me she had a rule not to marry any man who did not respect her dad, because her dad was a poor man, but he was a hard-working man who provided for his wife and children. My grandma always told me the greatest factor in her decision to marry her husband was that he respected her dad, and their marriage lasted 49 years until my grandpa passed away. Tip number 2, take up feminine hobbies like sewing, art, gardening, writing, etc. My grandma was an artist, made paintings of and for our family, sewed both by hand and with a sewing machine, clothes and bedding. Having had a small business, I believe, when she was a younger wife, and kept a rose garden in the front yard of our house and cared for houseplants indoors before she moved. She loved reading and literature. Homemaking was and still is her greatest passion. She valued and did not take for granted the areas where she was talented, and she and her husband taught me to cultivate my areas of talent. For me, music was my area of strength, as was my grandma's husband's area of strength, and as Papa played piano and was a singer, they paid for me to have piano and singing lessons as a child, which led to me playing piano professionally at different churches and composing music. As a homemaker, your areas of talents and spiritual gifts are valuable. By spiritual gifts, I mean the gifts of the Holy Spirit found in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. God grants every woman her own unique set of spiritual gifts and talents. The Proverbs 31 wife was gifted and talented and applied her gifts and talents to being both a homemaker and a businesswoman. Tip number 3, modest feminine fashion. If you have been on my page and or known me for some time, you know I favor the sustainable, natural, and organic life. I love the GOTS, which stands for the Global Organic Textile Standard when it comes to shopping for organic cotton baby clothes for new babies in my family and amongst my friends. But this certification also applies to women's clothing. Brands like Pact carry modest women's clothing that is also GOTS certified organic. Another certification I like is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ecotex Standard 100. And fabrics other than cotton like silk, wool, and linen are more natural and sustainable fabrics that you might find with this certification, and outfits made with these materials for women tend to be more modest. As I shared in a previous video, my other grandma, my father's mother, loved wearing silk, and my father has bought me modest silk dresses from the sustainable brand Reformation and the Etsy brand M Silk. And the quality of these modest dresses has been hand-me-down level. This dress is not one of those silk dresses, but this dress is actually a dress that belonged to my grandma that she handed down to me. I believe the essence of being a traditional woman is being conservative in terms of the ability to pass faith, values, skills, and even things like fashion sense and family recipes down generationally, building family traditions, and thinking about what you study, invest in financially, and what hobbies and passions you pursue with the mindset of how this can become a heritage. In terms of fashion, as I said earlier, my maternal grandma not only valued her own fashion, as I believe is visible by this picture, but also had a small business designing clothes when she was younger. And lastly, a pattern I have seen among the traditional women who have the happiest, most personally fulfilling lives is that these are the women who honor their family history. They respect their fathers and grandfathers, and they don't take the wisdom of their mothers and grandmothers for granted. My maternal grandma, when I was a child, shared with me almost daily the lessons she learned from her own mother who passed away before I was born. Having access to my grandma's testimony and the wisdom in it was a form of privilege, because it was how she overcame areas where she was underprivileged in her generation that opened the door for me not to grow up with those same obstacles. And that testimony of success in a woman in my bloodline is worthy of my respect. And this is why I'm so thankful I was able to share the testimony of my grandma's marriage prophecy before she moved this year. She overcame obstacles by respecting her own mother's testimony of overcoming obstacles she didn't have to experience firsthand. My hope is that, as always, this video reaches everyone God intends it for.